What's up, friends? Today we are here to review one of the biggest, baddest, most powerful, quickest long-range boards that you can buy in 2025 or build for that matter. What makes it so special? Well, I've got a lot to say on this, so let's jump right into this review of this awesome board, the Rev Phantom X. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, we're really laying it on thick from the start. Well, there's a lot of things about this board that sort of make it special, and there's a couple things that no one in the industry has tried yet, and all of that sort of bundles up into a very premium, heavy, long-range, powerful package. And all of that brings to question, what is the goal of this review? I think the goal of all of my reviews is to show you an accurate portrayal of what you have on the table in the review. First off, I want to go into who I think this board is for and what the target customer is. So first off, this board is incredibly powerful and it goes a very long distance and it commands a high price. Now, all these things sort of put it far out of the beginner category, in my opinion. If you have a lot of money and you want to get started with a board, sure, you can buy this, but on the other hand, it might scare you out of e-skating in the first place. If you've never been on a board before and this is the first one, you can definitely do it, and there are speed modes that have less power, but the high end of its capabilities are so high past beginner level that I think it may be difficult for newbies to start on this board and feel comfortable on it. I've had some of my friends try it and a lot of them think that it's super powerful, a little bit touchy because of how much power it is compared to their normal board. And if you're spending this much money on a board, I think you really want to know that you love the hobby. You know that you need maximum performance, you know that you need lots of range, and that's what this board is. Back when Lacroix was super popular, the Lone Star Super Sport, the 18S 8P version, was a very, very expensive board. And I can guarantee you that almost nobody in the beginner class was buying that board either. And this, I think, falls solidly into that same category. It's a premium board with lots of power, more than a Lacroix, I might add. Great maneuverability, great build quality, and great range. So I think this is a premium product for high-end, focused, experienced riders. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Not every board company needs to have a beginner option. And that's not to say that Rev won't come out with a lighter weight option or won't come out with a more beginner-friendly option. But today, the Phantom X, as the name might impose, is a great board for that experienced rider that needs maximum performance. Now, it feels like a lot of the time nowadays, when we talk about maximum performance, people always assume that it has to be for the track or that it's a racing board. Now, that brings the question, can you put this on the track? The answer is definitely yes, and you can absolutely be super competitive. This thing has more than enough power for the track, and these trucks are such that you can make them very maneuverable, almost to the point where they react and can turn similar to three links. And that is a really great capability to have on a track. There are also tires that can fit on here that work well for a track. And those are a special set that you can buy on the Newbie website. They're super wide, sort of semi-slick tires, and they look sick. They look really, really cool. There are, I think, 2 different hub options that you can use that are compatible with this drive and those tires. Additionally, I believe the Rev brand, which is sort of, if you know what Newbie E-Skate is, it's the same person that designed both brands. I think that this drive has adapters that are compatible with other hubs. If there isn't one on the website, he might have one that's not listed yet. But if you want to use different wheels on here than these giant ones, there's definitely options, and we'll get into that when we get into the RBEM score, but these big wheels are not your only limit. And in fact, these 5.0 gear drives are not actually that big, and you can run wheels all the way down to 6 inches on it. And I have these exact gear drives on my personal mountain board, which I've ridden all the way down to the BKB 6-inch tires. Now, you go all the way down there, your top speed is going to be pretty dang low, but maybe that's a trade-off that you're willing to make. So, to answer the question of can you track it, you definitely can. It'll take some bushing adjustment, maybe some angle adjustment on the trucks, and you'll have a very capable track board. Let's talk about a few of the Rev's strongest points. Now, there are a lot of strong points on this board, and there's some that people might consider a little bit of a drawback, but starting with number 1, the power. This thing is incredible. This is a VESC-based board running at 21S and 200 motor amps per motor. And that's real. I have VESC recording showing the motor output getting to 200 amps and exceeding it, because anyone that uses VESC knows that they love to blow past their limits a little bit. So 200 amps per motor. No other board on the market does that, period. Even the Mach 1, which is another very powerful VESC board, doesn't quite get to that level. The Maker X ESC that's in here is an incredible piece of kit, and so far Rev and them have reported very good reliability, so that's awesome. Power is incredible. It's put down through a gear drive, no slip, no belt slip or anything crazy like that, and honestly it's more than most people need. I love being able to slam on the throttle and just go flying. It's so fun. It's the greatest feeling, having all that power on tap. It feels like a DIY board, because in fact this is more powerful than probably 95% of all DIY boards. I know maybe 2 or 3 people in my DIY friend group that even have attempted to do 21S, and one of them has ridden this board, and I have a short interview with him that I'm putting in a different video. I think a lot of people find that interesting. It's from Hudson, Post Toast. Anyone in the racing community probably knows who he is, but he tried this board. He also has a 21S board, and then maybe a couple other people on the eSkate forum have 21S boards, but most of them are not to this reliability or running 200 amps per motor. So that's number 1 positive for the Rev. Number 2 is definitely going to be the range. Now, a 6P pack is not the biggest pack in the world, but given that it's 50S cells from Samsung, which I think are a pretty underrated cell for popularity, they have 5,000 milliamp hours per cell, 6 in series, 21S, so 21 in series, 6 in parallel. You end up with a staggering watt hour number of, I believe, 2.3 kilowatt hours of energy in here, and that takes you a very long distance. In the range test portion of this video, I'll have the exact numbers, but it went 57.6 miles, and that was actually in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, definitely check that out, because I talk about the board with Gialong, one of my other friends, as we do the range test. So range is number 2. There's really not many boards on the market, period, that can even come close to 57 miles. And again, you'll see in the performance section how much it stomps the other boards that I've tested. The only other boards on the market that exist that come close are the LaCroix boards, which are old but are sort of coming back, and probably Lawrence, because they also have an absolutely massive battery pack. The Cali XLR probably could come close as well, but those, those caught on fire, so people don't really have those anymore. If you can think of another board that comes close to this range, in real world range, mind you, not any manufacturer specs, let me know in the comments, because I'd be interested to know if there's something that I'm missing. But range is number 2. Now, my third point that I want to make for the Rev's positives, or strong points, is the maneuverability. And this one might be kind of strange, because you see this massive board and you wonder, is that going to turn like a boat? Well, no. it has very good maneuverability due to the design of the SAT truck system. And this truck system can most similarly be compared to maybe duality or a combination of 3-link and TKP. It's kind of hard to describe the exact feeling of it without riding it yourself, but I think it's most similar to the duality trucks, which have been getting a lot more popular in the DIY scene within the last year or so. They're very maneuverable, and on this board in particular with the stock angle setup, they're very, very responsive, which means even at high speed, you can still take a turn easily and quickly, I guess is the right way to say it. In addition, like I said earlier, you can take them on a track, you can do really sharp turns. Compare that to something like a traditional style channel truck, especially with no bindings, like the Matrix 3, the Matrix 2, the channel trucks from Cali or Lawrence or anyone really that has channel trucks. This is going to far exceed the stock out-of-box terrain capabilities of any of those boards, all while still being able to do 40 plus miles an hour. Now, big caveat to the top speed is that it takes some time to learn these trucks. You can't just hop on here and immediately go 40 miles an hour. You will fall. These trucks are such that they have a high level of maneuverability, but they're also very responsive. So you have to know how to move your feet, how to react your body to respond to bumps in the road, to respond to throttle changes, and just know how to position your body so that when you get to 40 miles an hour, you're not freaked out by a little bump on the road. And not everyone needs to go 40 miles an hour. Believe me, 30 is plenty for most people, and even 25 or so is plenty. I mean, it's still pretty fast when you consider the speed of an average bike, like a pedal bike. So anyway, the maneuverability is a big positive, but it takes some time to get used to, and you have to respect the board and know that it's very powerful and that you have a lot of weight under you that you're steering in whatever direction you're trying to go. All right, let's take a moment away from the yapping and get into that juicy performance data. Let me just put this in a short way. The Rev Phantom X is a chart smasher. This thing absolutely decimated its competitors on the charts that I have, especially the production boards. So let's get into these numbers and prepare to have your socks blown off. First up, acceleration. So we have two categories for acceleration, the 0 to 20 mile an hour test and the 100-meter sprint. In the 0 to 20 mile an hour test, we got a blistering 1.68 seconds. Now, you may be looking at the Nomad N3 and thinking that it seems awfully close, but believe me, 0.3 seconds is a huge difference when it gets down to this tiny amount of time. You absolutely rocket off of the line when you full throttle this board, and it can do it consistently over and over again. Now, the only thing on this chart right here that has beat it is my own personal race board, which is an 18S board with race ESCs and BRPs, so small wheels, specifically built to go like as quickly as possible. So the fact that you can just buy this off the shelf now is crazy. I mean, it's almost unheard of for a production board to get into these number ranges. Nowadays we have the MLR and the one from Lin Power that might be able to get close to these times, but I haven't tested the one yet. And the MLR review is coming soon, so I know what the numbers are, but this is still really impressive. So 0 to 20 mile an hour, it got second place. Really first place because mine is a DIY. The Nomad N1 and N3 are pretty close behind it, so you got to give them some respect. And then behind that we have the Atlas Pro and Paragon and some other ones. Granted, there aren't a ton of super powerful boards on my list, but I have tested a good number of boards, so the comparison is still valid. Next up, this is where it gets really crazy, the 100-meter sprint. In the 100-meter sprint, your board is allowed to get up to a much higher speed, and this pretty much hit its top speed before it even got to the finish line of the 100 100 meter sprint, and it came in at a blistering 7.03 seconds. And believe it or not, that is an entire second faster than the next on this list. Now you will notice that I don't have raceboard P3 on the 100 meter sprint list because honestly, it's scary to do 100 meter sprints and I haven't had time to retest it yet. Regardless, 1.2 seconds faster than the Nomad N3, faster than the Defiant 1, X-Way, Alice Pro, blah, 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 blah. It's very, very quick. 7.03 seconds. And I believe it crossed the finish line at 41.3 miles an hour, which is very fast as well. I'll show you some clips of the 100 meter sprint that Gialong helped me do for this board. Next up, braking. Now, interestingly, this didn't top the braking chart, but I think there might be a couple reasons for that. One, these tires are quite large, and a lot of the other boards have much smaller wheels, which allows them to have a better mechanical advantage and get a little bit more braking force. I did test this in the full braking mode of 9 on the Rexus remote, but there is a bug per se with the Maker X ESC that's in here, and at like 0 miles an hour, like 2 down to 0 miles an hour, the braking is significantly weaker than Hobbywing ESCs and some of the Lingies. I think that's just due to how they manage current down at that low speed, but for this one, I think that's why it lost its extra couple of feet here over the best performers on here. So it came in 6th place on the braking chart at 18.1 feet, which is still pretty good, and that's 15 miles an hour down to 0. The ones that beat it, 3 DIY boards, and then the Aries X1 and the Nomad N1. The Nomad N3 came in a little bit after it, same with Flex Paragon. So it's still respectable, still in the top percentage. I think it could be at the very top if it had slightly smaller tires and didn't have that braking bug. I say bug, but it's not really going to affect you in day-to-day life too much. It's just something that exists. Now, we've gone over the 100 meter sprint, 0 to 20 time, the braking. This is fast enough to set a 0 to 30 time, which is extremely fast. The 0 to 30 time for this one was 2.68 seconds. Now, that is crazy when you compare to the rest of the data that I have, and you look at the next numbers on the chart for the 0 to 20 times, and you see that 2.68 beats still almost all of the rest of the boards for an extra 10 miles an hour. So pretty crazy stuff. And the next part, the stall torque, is nuts. And this is a VESC thing for sure, being able to put down this much power at the low 0 mile an hour speed. The 200 amps per side really came in and absolutely blew the competition out of the water at 104.35 Newton meters. For reference, the next closest thing is the Nomad N1 at 59.48. I mean, what is there to say? Absolutely crazy 0 mile an hour torque, and that's what gets you off the line so quickly and then continues you all the way to 30 miles an hour in under 3 seconds. Pretty crazy stuff. I have a feeling that other boards will join this list in this higher range pretty soon, but for now, it stands alone up there at the top. So pretty impressive. Final thing here, top speed. The max is 41.3 that we measured with Draggy on this board. It is going to vary a little bit depending on how heavy you are, a little bit. The size of the wheels, how worn down they are. If you're on any gradient, it's really just a little bit of variable. However, it does hold the second place spot. The Defiant 1 did go a little bit faster, but had much less torque, so it took way longer to get there. So yeah, 41.3 was the speed we crossed at the end of the 100 meter sprint. and it's really impressive. With this much torque, a lot of boards that are DIY would end up having a lower top speed than this, so this is quite the knockout. Speaking of knockouts, range. If you haven't seen the range test video for this board yet, be sure to check that out up in the iCard. It is a pretty interesting range test in my opinion. I did it with my friend Gialong, and we found the limits of this board for sure after many hours of riding. The range for this board came out to 57.6 miles, which, by the way, blows the entire rest of the chart out of the water, because the actual range of this board is more than any of the quoted ranges for any of the other boards that I've tested. The manufacturer quoted ones, mind you. Now, Rev is definitely far from the biggest offender when it comes to overrating their range. They rate their board for around 75 miles of range, which I think is completely possible with the right conditions. Now, in my range testing route, we have a large hill that happens every time we do a loop, and that takes out a lot of power for going up that elevation. So if at the end of the range test, I review the elevation chart, I think it's somewhere around 2,300 feet gain, maybe more than that. But the upper range of this, I think, is definitely attainable to get 75 miles if you're on the lighter side, if you ride a little slower, or if there's less hills in your routes. So the percentage off is only 29% off from the manufacturer rated range. So really not bad. The next closest range on this chart is the Nomad N3, which came out to 34.4 real world miles. Same route, same testing speeds, etc. That board was rated for 50 miles. Didn't make it there. This board did over 50 miles. And man, it took a long time. But one thing I'll say about the range and the deck, I didn't really have any real foot fatigue at all. The combination of these big tires, the comfortable, slightly flexy deck, and the concave made it a really pleasurable experience, and I didn't have any problem doing those miles. So I think a lot of people who are looking for a long-range board will like this. Now, the deck is very different than, say, the LaCroix Lone Star Super Sport deck. This has a little bit of camber, there's a little bit more concave, and it's not as flexible, but it's still very comfortable. And the addition of these sort of wings gives you a lot more control when it comes to maneuvering the board. Putting all those numbers together into my weighted score, we come out to a total PSPEC of 108.9. The next closest board on this chart is the Nomad N3 at 76.6, which is respectable, but the Nomad N3 is also a very performant board, and there will definitely be some more boards that pop up on here in the future. So, really great rating from the Phantom X. Really impressive performance, knocks a lot of boards straight out of the water, and honestly, that's what I would expect paying the price that you do for this board. We're going to take a breather here for a minute and go back to some specs here. So dimensions, weight, and clearance on this board are things that people are going to be interested in. The total length of the board, roughly measuring motor to front of tire, is around 44 inches, pretty large. The total track width of contact patch to contact patch is around 17.5 inches. The deck width is around 10.6 inches, which is really good, by the way. If my foot can comfortably rest on this entire width in the front and the back, and you've got a nice concave to lock yourself in there. The wheelbase from center of wheel to center of wheel is around 37.5 inches, which is not incredibly long, but definitely long enough to be noticeable when it comes to your stance on the road. The standing platform of where the pocket is to pocket is pretty large at around 27-ish inches. And this standing platform can definitely be a bit on the long side for shorter riders or for people that prefer a shorter stance. Some of my friends found themselves putting their foot way up here and sort of up here instead of on the outside because it felt too uncomfortable to get out to that width. Now, You can stand in here, but the most comfortable spot is out there. So just keep that in mind. If you're super short, this might not be the board for you because it's a lot to handle in terms of really getting your feet out there into those pockets. Now, clearance on this board is something that one of my commenters on Instagram specifically asked me to look at. Follow me on Instagram, by the way, if you hadn't already. Ground to enclosure clearance is about 2.8 inches or so on the front and back. Oh, there's actually a lot more clearance on the front than there is on the back. Oh no, I was just looking at it wrong. Around 3.25 inches of clearance on the front and back to the enclosure. Not bad, not mountain board level, but still pretty good. From the ground to the standing platform, we're looking at about 6-ish inches. So you're decently high off the ground, but not an insane amount. And you can use that to compare to your own boards at home. The impressive thing though is the clearance between the ground and the truck hanger, which is over 3.5 inches. The lowest part of the board though is the edge of the SAT truck, and that comes out to about 3 inches from the bottom of the tire up to the red part on the truck. So pretty decent clearance. I wouldn't really consider this an off-roading board. You definitely can take it on a lot of different off-road tracks, especially if you switch to those grippy off-road tires. But with these ones, it just gives you really good clearance over speed bumps and pine cones and pebbles and all sorts of things like that. The weight of this board, some might say, is astonishing, coming in at 61.3 pounds. It is the heaviest board that I've tested on my channel by far. The only thing that has come close is the X-Way Atlas Pro with the V1 gear drives and the aux pack. So that's a 12S10P battery, so 120 cells plus a big metal enclosure and those really beefy X-Way V1 gear drives. On here, these gear drives are pretty lightweight, and honestly, a lot of the weight comes from the sheer number of cells in here, as well as probably a decent bit of weight from this carbon deck, which is really well made. All right, we got the board flipped over and you can see the underside of these unique trucks. Now, these trucks are actually unique in more ways than one. For one, the main thing is that none of the rider weight goes directly through the bushings. In a traditional truck, you're sort of standing on top of the board side bushing, and then the roadside bushing presses between the hanger and the kingpin to give you the leverage and resistance when you're turning. In this, since the bushings are 90 degrees from the rider weight, you have this really interesting dynamic where the bushings are just providing the resistance for the truck. So you don't get speed wobbles in the same sense that you would get on a normal truck. You also get a lot of maneuverability without sacrificing stability. So you don't have to crank the trucks down super hard to feel the effect and keep the stability at high speed while also having some low speed turning. So it's a pretty good balance. But in any case, you are also able to change the angle at which the trucks sit. I believe stock puts you at 45 degrees in the front and 15 in the rear, something like that. But you have a couple of notched adjustments that can let you get more steer in the front or less, and more steer or less in the back. I haven't adjusted them because I've found that the stock settings were great for me. But if you do want to adjust them, I'll show some B-roll of the 2 bolts that you have to undo. You can pop them out and turn it. Kami also took off these trucks and adjusted them in his video. If you want to watch that after this, feel free to go ahead and take a look. But you can adjust the trucks, and to tighten them, they give you a special ratcheting wrench in the box, but I believe you can actually fit the, you can fit the traditional kingpin nut size on here and adjust it with a normal skate tool anyway. Tighten it down to make the bushings tighter and loosen it up to give you a little bit more maneuverability. Pretty easy. It's just in a different orientation than a normal skate truck. Oh, I should also just mention that these come with rip-tied bushings out of the box, so you should have a really good experience out of the box. and you can adjust them with whatever other riptide bushings you would like. I believe there's some suggestions on the Rev website of which ones to buy, but it looks like on here we have, they look like tall cones or chubby cones, something like that. But for me, I've got the dark red in the back, light red in the front. I believe that's a 96-93 split. I'm not 100% sure, but this is what he sent it to me with. So it worked out for me. Back on the other side of the board, you will find that there are pre-installed inserts for bindings. Now, not everyone's going to want to put bindings on this board, but if you do want to do some off-roading or get some additional leverage for racing, you can slap an MBS F5 binding straight into these pre-installed inserts and have a great time. I really love it when companies do this because it gives you the flexibility to slap it on there and trust that it's going to be a strong connection to the deck and not have to drill anything, because honestly, drilling a deck is nerve-wracking in the first place, so it feels better having it done from the factory. Good job on Ethan and Rev, and they are mirrored in the back in case you're wondering. All right, we got all that out of the way. It's time to move on to the subjective scoring, which is the RBEM score. So we got a maximum possible of 70 points here, starting with build quality. The Rev Phantom X has amazing build quality. Everything on this board has been crafted with care and with the utmost precision. Deck, piece of work, super strong. I believe it's something like T700 or T800 carbon fiber. Really good stuff. Really high quality enclosure. You can scrape this and beat on it. It's not gonna break. I'm not sure what the exact construction is, but if I had to guess, it's probably fiberglass, given how some of the damage has come through on here. Amazing heat sink for the ESC. Great wheels. Really great construction on the trucks. Really great machining. There's nice little touches like this awesome charging port. There is a USB port to charge your phone off of. I believe it has USB PD as well. I think 60 watt. It's got really nice gear drives with a spider on them. That is the vibration dampening interface with the wheels. One drawback on the gear drives is that they're not all metal, so it is possible to break the wheel gear, which is I believe palm, which is pretty standard for wheel gears in a lot of boards. I kind of wish that it was all metal, but I mean, there are some compromises that have to be made sometimes. Not sure what the reasoning was to not go all metal, but everything else on the board is amazing. I've had absolutely zero problems with the build quality of this. Even the grip tape with its intricate shape has stayed on really well and is super grippy. So amazing job on build quality. Just a tiny point off for those gear drives. I think they should be all steel. So it gets a 9.9 out of 10, which is the highest I've ever given. The deck, I ended up giving a 9.5 out of 10. This deck is very comfortable. It's not 100% perfect for me though, and most of that 0.5 off is the fact that it really forces you into a super wide standing platform, and it has a little bit more camber than I would like. I don't like super cambered decks. Fortunately, this one is not super cambered. It has like maybe a degree or two. And for me, I think I would like it better, a little bit flatter. Again, this is a subjective score, so that's what you get. 9.5 out of 10. Again, this is still the highest score that I've given for any board. Really love this deck. It's a really great piece of work. Flexible, sturdy, maneuverable with those wings on the edges. And honestly, I wouldn't even think that this would have a problem holding a 300-pound rider. It's just built that densely. ESC, sorry, remote is up next. And for that, we've got the Rexus remote. Now, this isn't the one for the Rev, but I have a number of these laying around. The Rexus remote is an awesome piece of kit. Really comfortable to hold in the hand, awesome thumb wheel, reverse switch modes, a nice color touchscreen, and really bad battery life. Yeah, so the Rexus remote likes to die when it's sitting on the shelf. And I've been told that the production version of the Rev has a bigger battery in the Rexus remote than the standard one. So hopefully it'll last longer for you, but oftentimes my remote will die while it's sitting on the shelf between rides. I haven't had an issue with it on a ride. Even the 57.6 mile ride, I didn't discharge the remote all the way. So it seems like this is mostly like a standby thing. Maybe it's using a little more power in standby than it should be. Overall, I love the Rexus. Really comfortable, great thumb wheel. If I had to complain about one thing, it's that my finger can sort of get sucked into the little gap between the thumb wheel and the plastic case. And when I'm riding at the same speed for a long time, I sort of get locked in a little spot there. This is really nitpicking, by the way, but it can feel a little bit weird for me sometimes. Overall though, great remote, miles better than a lot of the other remotes on cheaper boards, and even a lot better than what was used on the LaCroix boards, which were previously one of the most expensive, which is the standard Hoyt puck. So I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Again, very high in my ratings. The ESC. So this uses a Maker X ESC. It's a VESC-based speed controller. Amazing power, and so far really good reliability, probably partially due to the fact that it has this massive heatsink. And I think Ethan did a lot of work on the settings to make sure that the end user gets a really consistent experience on VESC. And since it is VESC, you can modify it to your heart's content. You can literally just Bluetooth in straight to the VESC over its Bluetooth module and change whatever you want. I do not recommend that anyone changes whatever they want unless they know what they're doing though, because you can seriously mess up your board if you change the wrong thing. It'd be nice if there was a user accessible app or something, but there's not at this time to make it more friendly to change modes, for example. But overall, it's a VESC, one of the most powerful VESCs ever, period, but definitely the most powerful VESC in any production board today. And for that, I gave it a 9.8 out of 10. The 0.2 off is mostly for the 0 mile an hour braking issue, and that's something that the D100S has had problems with for years now. So hopefully they'll fix that eventually, but it's not fixed yet. Next up, trucks and bushings. The trucks on here are completely unique, nothing quite like them on any other board when this first released. I would argue that the trucks on the One are sort of similar in design, in the sense that the bushings are not taking rider weight, but I imagine they perform a little differently. These trucks are super wide, gives you a really wide track width that helps give you some stability. Traditionally that can take away some maneuverability, but these trucks through their design and unique construction sort of get you that back. I really enjoyed these trucks. Like I said before, they have a learning curve. You can't just hop on here and go 40 miles an hour out the gate. So definitely respect the board, definitely get used to how these trucks respond, and you shouldn't have any issues with speed wobbles. My friend Gialong, he rips on this board so much harder than me, and he rides over 40 miles an hour all the time. I mean, the things he does are ridiculous, but they're fully capable of doing high speed. You just have to learn how they respond. So for that, I gave them a 9.5 out of 10. Really great stuff. For a board this size, they do incredible. Trust me, they're nothing like hyper trucks. Wheel options is up next, and I gave it a 3 out of 5. There are a number of different wheels that you can use on here. In fact, most of the mountain board wheels that exist could be adapted to this. I believe the X-Way wheels, the super wide ones, work with this, so you can use those wide tires. And you can use hubs all the way down to 6 inches, but you're never going to be able to put urethane on here just because the gear drives are too big and you'll run out of ground clearance. So that's why it's a couple points off. So 3 out of 5 for wheel options. I think this could have an opportunity to be better if more adapters were provided out of the box or on the website. And honestly, you could probably design those pretty quickly, but for now, 3 out of 5, pretty good. As for water resistance on this board, there's no official rating on the website, but I feel that it is sealed pretty well. The wires all go through grommets. There's a really nice gasket all the way around the board, and honestly, there's no real holes that water can even get into. So you've got a pretty good gasket in there. And if I had to guess, it probably would qualify somewhere around IP55. But like I said, there's no official rating. So just based off the gaskets that I see and build quality, I would say it's a 3 out of 5 for water resistance. especially compared to the other boards that I've seen. Some others definitely have higher water resistance because they have official ratings. I could see this going up a little bit if it had an official rating, but given that there's so many screws in the enclosure, there's a lot of opportunities for water to potentially get in, so that's my main reason for that rating. Customer service. Being a new company, Rev is probably an unknown for a lot of people in terms of customer service. They're also a very small company, so from what I've experienced on Instagram and responsiveness, they're pretty good. I haven't really heard anyone say much negative about their customer service. Again, it's a small company, so you have to set your expectations. This isn't Meepo, where you theoretically should have a number of customer service agents that are able to help. But given that this is probably a smaller quantity, I think that the owner of Rev and whoever they work with should be able to get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. So for now, I've set them at a 4 out of 5, which is more on the optimistically good side. If anyone has anything to say about Rev customer service, leave it down in the comments below because I'm curious what your experience has been. Mine has been pretty good. Price and value on this board is sort of the big thing. Now, as of today, on the site, this thing comes in at $37.99. That's $3,799 US. So shipping does not explicitly state that it's free. It says it'll based on weight. It will be based on weight and location. So $37.99 before shipping. I don't know what shipping is going to cost for your location. I'll put a number on screen for what I got when I calculated it via their system to the US. But I think the value for something like this is actually quite high. This is really hitting up there on all the charts, smashing charts in performance, and for me, smashing charts on the usability and quality of the board. So I think the value is actually quite high despite the price. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 for value. Now, overall, that brings us out to another chart topper at 62.2 points out of 70. And this comes in a little bit above the next one on the chart, which ironically is the X-Way Flex 2 Pro. Completely different world of board, but my experience on it was still really good. So that's what this whole chart is about, is it rating my experience on the board. And this, I believe, to be the best experience on any board that I've owned. Honestly, this board could take place of most of my DIYs and I wouldn't even be sad about it because it's just that powerful. Honestly, you would struggle to build a board this powerful and have it be reliable even today if you were an experienced builder. So that's saying a lot. And the fact that you can't even really get any of these parts, like they're not just like DIY parts. This is a bespoke build with a highly integrated battery, a highly integrated ESC, and charging and trucks and drives. Like, you can buy newbie gear drives, you can buy the trucks by themselves, but you're probably not going to be able to get to the same level of polish and reliability as you would by just buying it. And they're expensive on their own. So take from that what you will, but for me, this is the best board that I've ever used on a daily basis. And huge props to Rev for topping that on my chart and blowing some of my DIY boards out of the water. I mean, if you look at Black Mamba on those performance charts back there, this blew it out of the water. So really great job to Rev. Before we go into closing thoughts, I have a discount code for this board. I believe it's $100 off if you enter code RBEM at checkout. Hopefully this video will convince a lot of you that this board is absolutely worth the money, and I get a little bit of kickback if you do end up purchasing the board. This is a demo board sent to me by Rev, so I have to send it back after I'm done. I think I am scheduled to make some more content with this though. Some really, really interesting content. So get subscribed to see what I'm going to do with this awesome board. But final thoughts. First, let's talk for just a second about what things might be out of the comfort zone for some people on this board. One, it might be too powerful for beginners, and the cost to power ratio for a beginner is kind of on the very, very high end. I think as a beginner, you'd be better served getting a a board that you can grow into a little bit faster, and then once you find the limits of that board, consider upgrading to something like this. Additionally, it's not very portable. It's a really big, heavy board. If you're not reasonably fit, you may struggle getting this into your car at over 60 pounds. It's pretty hefty. It's not too hard to carry, and it's pretty easy to drag by one of the front wheels, but I'm fairly athletic and I can one arm it, but not for very long. I can carry it under one arm for a little bit, but it's really not comfortable. So those are some things that I think people might be a little bit scared of. Again, the price is high, but I think it's worth it. And yeah, there's really not a ton that I have to say about this board that's negative. It's just been a really good experience. This thing is incredible. So if you're wondering if you should buy this board, probably. If you have the money, I encourage you to support this company. I really believe in the product that they've created here, and I think that if he makes an iteration in the future, it's going to be even better. So, oh, I should mention, by the way, this is a demo board, but it's actually so good that I've considered just buying it off of them. And as someone who's ridden as many boards as I have and has a number of DIYs, if that's not a good enough reason for you to buy it, then maybe this board isn't for you. But I love this thing, and I'm still considering purchasing it off them before I send it all the way back to China. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this really long review and found it valuable. If you did, make sure to like and comment below. I want to hear what you guys think about this board. It's really out of this world compared to the rest of the competition right now. So, thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.